aware that something is
We know
happening
that,
in the
yeah.
process.
Yeah,
of
that's why
the-
the deacon reads the gospel and the priest preaches on the gospel.
Yes, of course.
It's two different actions.
Right.
And, when you have the deacon reads the gospel. I mean, that's, in the parish church, that's the way it happens. In monasteries, sometimes you don't have a deacon.
So to pull this back to the whole subject of hell, I think this is fascinating because it shows that this problem we're having with hell, and I think we had discussed earlier that you had said, if we're looking at the atheism movement, that they're not rejecting the church because of Darwinism or what have you. The church maybe thinks, oh, we haven't communicated well enough, and I think they're saying, no, you've communicated all too well, but we don't like the message because we find it repellent. So I guess I'm just trying to think about. So I guess what I'm saying is that the problem with hell is the tip of a much larger iceberg that I think is exciting and interesting to explore. But it just shows also there's not just really a simple answer to say we got hell wrong. Here's how we get it right. But just to say that maybe we need to re-examine our own hearts in terms of not only that, but how are we approaching our belief formation period.
And are we speaking just from the fullness of our own hearts and not from the understanding?
Right.
But I'd like to suggest really that the West and some of our own people as well need to look back at what the ancient church actually thought about hell, what it actually taught, and how different it is. And you mentioned that when I'm at a university down in America usually, I'll be able to, even though it's often a physics and philosophy class combined, because I'm dressed the way I am, people bring up religious questions, which gives me an opening to ask how many of you were raised in a Christian family. In some places, it'll be 90%. And then I ask how many of you are still consider yourselves to be Christians. It'll generally be 4 to 5%. And when I get the opportunity to ask individuals, why did you reject Christianity? In 35 years, I have never had even one student mention Darwin or evolution. That has never been the problem. The problem is, first of all, the Western doctrine of atonement, the concept of hell, Christian hypocrisy, and bigotry. Those are the 3 top questions. The Christian nature, the idea of atonement is, we would say it's a heresy because it changes the entire concept of what salvation is and the person of God. It changes the whole concept of how we view God, how we understand Him. And He no longer is a father. And the other thing is, when you look at the doctrine of hell, then God becomes actually the author of evil and worse than the devil. Because the devil is just doing what God has made him do, poking people with pitchforks in hell. And the ironic thing is that this vision of hell, where the demons are standing there torturing people, means that God has rewarded the demons for their wickedness by allowing them to spend all eternity doing what they enjoy most, that is tormenting human beings.
Well, it kind of.
And they're never suffering in hell. They're always perfectly scot-free.
Yeah.
But hell is for Satan and his angels, because the separation from God. And the other aspect of this is that God is so anthropomorphized that He becomes ridiculous, just ridiculous in the eyes of younger generation. And that's another thing that we have to look at very seriously. Is God the author of evil? Did He create heaven and hell? Did He actually create a hell? It's like misreading the Lord's Prayer. Christ never said deliver us from evil, because evil has no ontological being. If evil is a thing you can be delivered from, then God must have created it, because He created all that exists. And therefore God is the creator and the author of evil. But deliver us from the evil one, the one who has become evil through his own choice. And it's precisely what Christ says. And it changes, that one phrase, deliver us from the evil one, changes the whole concept of what salvation is about and what redemption is about. So it's in these little things that great transformations take place in our concept and understanding. For example, when a translator translates the Old Testament and comes across Sheol and translates it as hell, it's a mistranslation. And it's a translation out of the fullness of his own heart. But it's not what the Scripture says.
So you're saying I should make 3 movies then? One on hell, one on the atonement, and one on hypocrisy?
Oh, yes, I think so, yeah. Yeah,
Kevin's trilogy,
in a way, I always
the
think
new
about-
Trinity,
Somebody will say.
Trinitarian
you know,
theology.
From a doctrinal point of view, the Orthodox Church is the new Israel, and we always say, of course it's the new Israel. Look at all the scribes and Pharisees and Sadducees we have. We have more than anybody else, more Pharisees than any other religion. So of course, with
Well, I mean, the literalism is a new form of creating its own Sanhedrin.
Well,
If you don't buy
literalism
into
is new,
this
though, that's-
literal approach, the
Yeah.
Sanhedrin will banish you, they'll crucify you,
Right.
they take you outside of the city. So the literalist Sanhedrin,
That's right.
like in this new book that has just come out, is so offended.
Yeah, they're already, they
It's
haven't even
all-
read it yet, and
That's
he's
right.
been excommunicated.
Sanhedrin has come together. This is not an acceptable view of heaven and hell. It's not an acceptable view of atonement, not an acceptable view of God. So we take you to the court and we banish you. So this neo-Puritanism is it's a new form of a Sanhedrin
Mm.
founded on a questionable understanding of biblical authority, a questionable view of biblical interpretation, and then the application of that is certainly not loving or merciful to someone you disagree with or
Mhm.
gracious.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I wonder how many people, well, evidently they completely missed the point that Christ was not a fundamentalist. Because when the minute he said that the Sabbath was created for man, not man for the Sabbath, he clearly demonstrated he wasn't a fundamentalist. That he who actually gave us all this law in the first place understood it quite differently from the way humans did. And there are a number of other places where you come across in Christ.
He's a bit of a proof texter though, wasn't he?
No, I don't think, well, he quotes, but it shows that the understanding of it is completely different than what we understand.
I'm just teasing.
And of course, he only quoted from the Septuagint version, he never quoted from the version used by the Protestant
Huh.
in the Old Testament. Not one single place does Christ quote from the Masoretic.
Hmm.
He quotes only from the version that was used for the Septuagint,
Hmm.
exclusively.
I didn't know
Yeah, so if you believe that every word of the Bible must be taken, then you've got to scrap the Masoretic and take the Septuagint to begin with.
that. Because that's what Jesus.
Because that's what Jesus quoted from, yeah.
Interesting.
And that's what Paul quoted for, referred to. But the idea that, of this fundamentalism, now we go back, so that Christians become Old Testament Christians, not New Testament Christians. And they're so bogged down in the law of the
Mhm.
Old Testament.
Mhm.
And even the understanding that you take, I mean, where on earth do people get the idea that Onan's sin was masturbation, for example? I mean, it was coitus interruptus.
Hmm.
And that wasn't the issue. The issue was he was refusing to fulfill the Levirate law.
Mhm.
And even when Judah, goes out and oh, her name's slipped on my Tamara disguises herself as a prostitute. There's absolutely nothing wrong with him sleeping with a prostitute, is there?
Hmm.
No condemnation for that at all.
Right.
And then, of course, he comes back and he's going to stone her to death because she slept with somebody she wasn't married to.
Mhm.
And when she produces the ring and the staff, and he said, Tamara's been shown to be more righteous than me. And not because he'd been with a prostitute, but because she fulfilled the Levirate law.
Right.
And she'd gone to this great extreme to fulfill that law.
Hmm.
But, so the whole misunderstanding, even as a Jewish friend of mine who's an Orthodox Jew, and he's a civil lawyer, but also a Jewish lawyer. And he said, if we Jews had understood the law the way you Christians understand the law, the last Jew would have had to stone himself to death.
That'd be tough.
Yeah, but that's,
You could use the world.
you see this huge difference, this huge gap here
Mhm.
in it.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
And then look at Prophet Jeremiah, who says, the Lord said, God says, when I brought you up out of the land of Egypt, I gave you no commandments concerning sacrifices. When I brought you up out of the land of Egypt.
Mhm.
There's a problem here. So, when you get to be a literalist, you also are like two cars driving in the same lane toward each other. And you have so many problems that you can't be taken seriously by an educated younger generation
Mhm.
in it. And that's one of the great problems with the concept of hell as well.
Mhm.
So, anyway, we have the-
All right, so, well, this has been for me, I think a big confirmation that I want to continue down this road of, exploring this in a film. Something, I've worked on a lot of documentaries, and something I really feel is, I've had this luxury of being able to go deep on a number of topics that prior to working on the film, I really didn't know much about, and I realized that, you know, when you have that luxury of time to go deep into a topic, you have something most people never get. And so, I mean, I guess it'd be interesting to hear from both of you, just sort of a word to the average person out there who's just sort of struggling with this issue and the issue of hell, or just sort of any other of these, you know, the atonement or hypocrisy. How can they kind of get past that in the midst of a busy life where they have so many other things competing for their time?
Well, I don't think you can get past the hypocrisy, because we have to teach more than we can possibly fulfill ourselves. We're all hypocrites in that respect. But when we talk about the nature of hell and the atonement, I think it would do well for all Christians to look back to what the early church, the ancient church, actually thought and taught about it, because this is the core of Christianity. And if the ancient church was already wrong, then how are people going to come much later? How are they going to be right?
Right.
People who are closer to the apostles. And the other thing is that God says, I will have mercy and not sacrifice, and Christ repeats, I will have mercy and not sacrifice. Consequently, it's impossible that Christ could have been a sacrifice to God, because he'll have mercy and not sacrifice. And the idea of hell, anything that contradicts the concept of the love and mercy of God, has to be held in great suspicion. And we have to search more into the ancient church to find what was the actual answer, and how did we corrupt that answer so that we corrupted the whole concept of the mercy and nature of God. That's
That's interesting. What about you, Ron?
Yeah, I would say maybe a couple of things. I think those who, because really, as we mentioned, our concept of the atonement, concept of hell,
Right.
all of these are just byproducts of a certain way of understanding how you interpret. You interpret the Bible. So I think the first step for those who are perhaps addicted or uncritical of the literal approach would be to say, where is it appropriate to see the text as literal, but what are the problems if that becomes absolutized? And to point out the sort of reductio ad absurdum of a literalism run amok. The second thing, in which I concur certainly with Archbishop Lazar, is it is the fathers of the church in the West and East that have given us the means, if we are willing to sit at their feet, to interpret the Bible in various levels. And so the literal approach, in fact, even though it was there in the early church, it was always subordinated and reduced to a higher level of interpretation. The reduction of interpreting the Bible to the literal is more a product of 16th, 17th century fast forward. And so to those who question literalism, they're not the liberals, they're the real conservatives.
Right.
They're conserving the older way of understanding how the Holy Church has interpreted the text.
So just to clarify, you're saying that the hardcore literalists are the liberals, I mean, in terms of...
They're innovating.
They're innovating.
They're
creating
innovating.
something new.
Yeah, and that's the mark of liberalism. We innovate, we create something new that runs contrary to the teachings of the church itself historically. And so there's various ways, I think, of approaching those who only understand the faith in a literal, and it's usually a selective literal way at that, but I think a much more mature, broader way, which doesn't totally reject the literal, but said there's more to it.
Right.
The literal reveals, but it conceals a great deal. And this is where you get back to the mothers and the fathers of the church, and they can provide that much more mature read of how you interpret it. And that's where you really, when you hear the clamor for tradition today against liberalism, you might want to challenge the literalists who are a part of the liberal tradition and say, you claim to be conservative, you're just not conservative enough. You initiated the very liberal, tradition itself. And so I think the way to rescue the church against literalism is to track back into the wisdom of the mothers and fathers of the tradition itself and say this is another way of approaching the text. And by sitting at the feet of these wise women and men, they can say, we honor the text as you do, we just differ with your narrower approach to it, which is really emerged in its fullness more 16th, 17th, 18th century, and that's more an innovation, an ad hoc innovation. And the real conservatives are those who are trying to get back, honoring the text, but saying you interpret it in a much more refined, nuanced, mystical way also.
Well, thank you. Thank you for, sorry, I was going to say thank you for inviting me to be part of this. It's been really fun.
Yeah, and I'm really grateful to you for doing it. And as you'll, pay attention that we're always with these discussions, we try to have representatives of the Anglican, the Orthodox, and the evangelical movements, churches, so that we get a broader consensus and a broader perspective, and try not to narrow things down quite so much ourselves.